What if the ultimate truth of the Exodus story is that it has nothing to do with ancient history, but instead is more of a psychological and spiritual map concerning you and me finding our way out of the slavery or bondage of our own mind? If this is the entire comprehensive scope of the myth, then it represents one of the greatest, most continuous struggles that we will ever engage in. This internal bondage manifests as persistent, seemingly inescapable conflict, right? The ceaseless arguing, the self-criticism, the worrying, the deep-seated struggle that is contained entirely within your own mental landscape, along with all the emotional turbulence, things like your fears, your unfulfilled hopes, your desires, especially those unproductive circular internal conversations that never resolve anything, and I could go on, that are encased right here, between your temple, inside the only temple that is not man-made, your mind. So the central adversary here is the Pharaoh. Pharaoh is purely the internal thought, the relentless mental noise that piles up, clings to the old painful routines, and absolutely refuses to let you go. When the Bible describes Moses battling Pharaoh, then we can see that as you battling with yourself. It is the conscious aspect of yourself, trying to change your thinking, as we all try to do, to break loose from the problems caused by this inner mental turmoil. However, Pharaoh pursues you with the full force of his army, including 600 chosen chariots, Exodus 14:7. The number 6 is highly symbolic. It represents man-made systems or works and exhaustive effort, all the temporary fixes and strategies you've attempted with your limited willpower to subdue your own thoughts. But Pharaoh never rests, never gives up, and is always ready to pursue and reclaim control over your peace of mind. We can also see the constant struggle you have with the world as merely a persistent reflection of this internal psychological battle. And the ultimate goal, therefore, is the Passover, an internal shift where your awareness makes a definitive passage out of the constrained, reactive state of mind and into a state of clarity, of freedom, of self-mastery. This liberation of our consciousness is the only real change available to us. So our long and difficult journey begins when you recognize the crucial dormant energy within you, the force that finally compels you to say, I've had enough. I must get out of this mental slavery. When you reach the point that you just want to get into the car and drive, no matter who or what is left behind you, which I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. So the story names this essential spiritual energy Moses. This spark, this inner child of hope, is the only thing that can start to lead you in the right direction. So we've begun the journey. Next step is the long, hard labor in the desert. This is a necessary work which is, in my opinion, simply because it's by far the best method I've found, through the act of meditation and inner discipline. The time spent in silence and solitude to overcome the internal noise. And the idea here is to begin the activation of what's called the Kundalini energy, which is the vital force required for higher transformation. And when activated, it is the energy that moves up the central channel, up the spine. It's often depicted as a coiled snake at the base of the spine, which moves energy from the base of the spine upward through the chakras to bring an expanded state of consciousness. We can see a hint at this both earlier and later in the story. Firstly in Exodus 4 verse 2-4, and the Lord said unto him, Moses, what is that in thine hand? And he said, a rod. Then the Lord told him to cast it to the ground, and he cast it on the ground, and it became a serpent. Then the Lord told him to pick it up by the tail, which did, and it became a rod in his hand. So there we have the serpent, but also the rod, which is mentioned later when God tells Moses to lift up thy rod in Exodus 14:60. It means to consciously raise this spiritual energy up the spine, or the rod. The rod is the spine which we lift up through dedicated practice, i.e. meditation in the desert. When this energy rises, as Moses did, you will reach the mountaintop, where you end up speaking to a burning bush. You are touched by the fire, which is the fourth stage of consciousness. And there are 5 stages of consciousness in total. We have the earth, which is the lower carnal mind, up to the second stage, which is water, which is the essence of the initial baptism. Next we move up to air, which is nothingness, no thought. And of course we're running from the Pharaoh, which is our thoughts, which is what we're aiming for in the meditation, to take no thought. Then we move on to fire, the burning bush, the 4th stage. This process is why John the Baptist said, I indeed baptize you with water, but he that comes after me shall baptize you with the Holy Ghost and with fire. And the 5th and final stage is spirit, allowing your consciousness to make its passage from the old way of seeing to the new. Now, leaving Egypt simply means that you're finally headed in the right direction. But when you become aware of this, This recognition, knowing that there is a path, is everything. Because then you know deep down, you have some hope at least, that there is an internal spark of fire that can lead you out of this bondage, of this madness. Now, despite being on the right path, the ultimate crisis is unavoidable. Get to the Red Sea, and you find yourself stuck between the pursuing internal thoughts and the churning waters ahead. This is a moment of total psychological paralysis. Now, the sea is a symbol for your emotional nature, and when it's red, it's really in a bad place. The emotion is overwhelming. And at this point, God tells Moses that he shall encamp by the sea. Exodus 14:2. And now you are trapped. You are confined between your volatile emotional nature, which is the sea, and your own continuous destructive thoughts, Pharaoh's army, trying to drag you back into habitual bondage, stuck between two impossibilities. So what do we do? Well, in this emotional crisis, the weary mind, exhausted and confined, cries out, ready to just surrender to the familiar suffering. They scream at Moses, "For it had been better for us to serve with the Egyptians than that we should die in the wilderness." Exodus 14:12. This is your own mind, so beaten down and ready to give up and return to the miserable comfort of old thought patterns. In that moment of absolute panic, when you feel capable of absolute breakdown at any moment, the voice of Moses delivers one of the most important instructions for survival in Exodus 14:13. Fear ye not. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. You must stop. You cannot solve this problem through further frantic internal struggle. The only true escape is to be still in your meditation. This stillness is the necessary precondition for the coming miracle. And so the stillness leads to the great promise. The most important promise of all, Exodus 14:14, the Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. You are not equipped to fight this battle. Your limited, fear-driven self is not capable. So you must sit in stillness and shut up. Hold your peace. And you hold your peace by actively shutting down the thoughts of the mind. When you rise above all thoughts into that place where no thoughts exist, the limited self is absent. The you is now absent, and the supreme power takes over the conflict. This is the only reliable way. The sea will be opened and you will be set free. And the alternative is continued inner mayhem, which of course just guarantees perpetual bondage, and who knows where you'll even end up. So the practical instruction for action for the internal miracle follows Exodus 14:16, which we mentioned earlier. But lift thou up thy rod and stretch out thine hand over the sea and divide it. And again, as we mentioned earlier, to lift up thy rod means to raise the spinal energy, that inner fire, to deep and profound meditation. Once that energy is raised, you can stretch out thine hand over the sea, consciously placing your heightened awareness over your emotional nature. This is similar to when Jesus walked on the sea in Matthew 14. He demonstrates a level of consciousness that is above the sea of emotion. Let's move on to Exodus 14:19. And the angel of God which went before the camp of Israel removed and went behind them. And the pillar of the cloud went from before their face and stood behind them. And it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel, which is you. And it was a cloud and darkness to them, but it gave light by night to these, so that the one came not near the other all the night. So now you have God behind you. He's got your back to correct your course. And it says he was a cloud of darkness to them, but gave light by night. This is talking about the inner light that God is giving you. And the night is referring to your state of mind. So the morning would represent a time when everything is great. You have no troubles at all. Conversely, the night is when everything is as bad as it can get, just totally overwhelming. Then the opening occurs. Exodus 14:21, and Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night. If we picture ourselves as a compass, where forwards is north, then the east means to the right, which is referring to the right hemisphere of the brain, which is the side that deals with things like insight and intuition and spiritual awareness and even happiness. We can see this link with the east and right all throughout the Bible. For example, Ezekiel 43:4, the east, the right side, is the source of inner delight. Ezekiel 43:2, the glory of the God of Israel came from the way of the east. John 21:6, where Jesus says, cast the net on the right side of the ship and ye shall find. Genesis 2:8, now the Lord God had planted a garden in the east, in Eden. So God is causing the sea of your emotions to go back by a strong east wind, pushing you into the right hemisphere of the brain throughout the night, the time that you are most troubled. Onwards to Exodus 14:22. And the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea upon the dry ground, and the waters were a wall unto them on their right hand and on their left. This is meaning the narrow way, the disciplined path, straight through the center of chaos, where you are protected from the extremes. You can see another example in Numbers 22:26. And the angel of the Lord went further and stood in a narrow place, where there was no way to turn either to the right or to the left, same as the waters which were a wall to the right and to the left. We also have another example about the narrow way and the Lord having your back in Isaiah 30:21. And thine ears shall hear a word behind thee, saying, This is the way, walk ye in it, when you turn to the right hand and when you turn to the left. Back to Exodus 14:24. And it came to pass that in the morning watch the Lord looked unto the host of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and of cloud, and troubled the host of the Egyptians. So now it is the morning, and everything is fine now. You survived through the worst of it being the night. Also, we can see the pillar is now fire, again representing that stage of consciousness. Next the Lord said unto Moses, Stretch out thine hand over the sea, that the waters may come again. And Moses stretched forth his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to his strength when the morning appeared. And the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. Pursuing thoughts, the Pharaoh's army are overwhelmed. The power you have activated ensures their total defeat. You walk on dry land in the midst of the sea. Exodus 14:29, meaning you have overcome the immediate, paralyzing bondage of the mind. You are free to walk onto the next challenge, and now you know how to overcome whatever steps in front of you. And I'm going to leave that there, guys. Thank you so much for watching as usual. Please like, comment, subscribe, and until then, I'll see you next time.